There's this moment, and if it's ever happened to you, you already know exactly what I'm talking about, where someone who used to make your life miserable suddenly needs something from you, and you have a choice, a real one. You could play it cool, be the bigger person, all that stuff people always tell you to do, or you could just look right through them, like they're not even there. That's what happened to me, and I'm still thinking about it. So let me back up, because the story doesn't make sense without a little context first. This was junior year of high school. I went to a pretty mid-sized public school in the suburbs. Not huge, not tiny, the kind of place where everyone sort of knows everyone, but not well enough to actually care about each other. You know the type? Football was a big deal, the parking lot drama was a bigger deal, and the social hierarchy was absolutely real, even though everyone pretended it wasn't. My best friend at the time was a girl named Reese. We'd been close since freshman year, back when we were both awkward kids eating lunch near the gym because the cafeteria felt too chaotic. Reese was one of those people who's just genuinely funny. Not trying too hard funny, just naturally funny. She'd say something totally deadpan in the middle of a serious moment, and you'd lose it completely. At some point during sophomore year, Reese came out as trans. She didn't make a big production of it. She told her close friends, gradually started presenting differently, asked us to adjust our language. For me personally, it was a non-issue. She was still the same person, same humor, same terrible taste in music, same obsession with true crime podcasts. Nothing changed except some pronouns and the fact that she was visibly happier. But not everyone saw it that way. There was a guy at our school, I'm going to call him Marcus because that's close enough to his real name that I don't feel bad about it. Marcus was one of those guys who'd peaked at like age 15. Varsity track, decent looking, popular enough that teachers gave him the benefit of the doubt when they really shouldn't have. He wasn't a movie villain kind of bully. He was more insidious than that. He was a comments under your breath guy. A laugh just loud enough that you hear it guy. When Reese started being visibly out, Marcus decided she was his new project. It started small, little things, calling her by her old name in the hallway, even after she'd asked people not to, forgetting she'd corrected him. Then it escalated, not into anything physical, but into this constant low-grade social harassment, making comments in class that weren't technically directed at her but obviously were, getting his friends to snicker when she walked by. Once during a school assembly, he said something behind us that I will not repeat, but I watched Reese's jaw tighten and her eyes go distant, and I felt this cold, useless anger just sitting in my chest. I say useless because I didn't do enough. That's the honest truth. I said something to him once, some version of dude, cut it out, and he gave me this look like I was the weird one, and I let it drop. Reese told me not to make it into a thing because she didn't want the attention, so I listened to her, even though part of me wishes I hadn't. It went on like that for most of junior year. He'd pull some version of his routine, we'd ignore it, and the whole situation just sort of festered. Reese handled it with way more grace than I would have. She'd occasionally clap back with something so dry and devastating that even his friends had to look away to hide their reactions. But I could also tell it wore on her. You can only be the bigger person for so long before it just starts to feel like a consolation prize. Then summer happened. I got a job at the Starbucks near the Target off Route 9. Totally glamorous, I know. Reese spent a lot of the summer at her aunt's place upstate. Marcus, from what I gathered through the usual social media peripheral awareness, did Marcus things, posted gym videos, went to the lake, standard stuff. Junior year ended, senior year started, and somehow, almost immediately, things shifted. Not in any dramatic way. More like the pressure valve had just been turned down a little. New people had transferred in. Some friend groups had reshuffled over the summer, and Marcus, for whatever reason, was slightly less central to everything than he used to be. I didn't analyze it too hard. I was just relieved. Reese seemed good. Really good, actually. She'd gotten closer to a different group of people over the summer, kids involved in the school arts program and the literary magazine. She seemed lighter. We still talked every day, still did our thing, but she wasn't carrying that same exhausted quality she'd had by the end of junior year. Marcus had also mostly stopped. I don't know if someone finally said something to him, or if he'd just gotten bored. or if some small part of his brain had slowly assembled the information that what he was doing was genuinely bad. Either way, he was mostly not our problem anymore. And I'd stopped tracking him the way you track someone who makes you nervous. That's important. I genuinely stopped thinking about him. So one Saturday in October, I want to say it was mid-October, one of those first really cold weekends where you realize fall is actually turning into something, I was at Target, and not for any interesting reason. My mom had sent me to get dish soap and a specific brand of laundry pods and something from the seasonal aisle that I couldn't even find. I had a list on my phone and I was barely paying attention, just wandering around in a jacket that wasn't quite warm enough, half listening to a podcast. I turned into the main center aisle, the big one that runs through the middle of the store, and I almost walked directly into Marcus. He saw me first, I think, or we saw each other at basically the same time, and I watched his face do this thing where it caught itself mid-expression, like he'd been about to smile, or nod, or do whatever you do when you run into a vague acquaintance from school in a Target, some automatic social reflex just starting to happen. And I just kept walking. Not in a dramatic way. I didn't stop, I didn't make a face, I didn't do anything telegraphed. I just looked at him for about half a second and then redirected my gaze to the aisle I was heading toward, like I was reading a sign, and I kept moving normal pace, like it had been nothing. Because to me, in that moment, it kind of was. I heard him say, "Hey," very quiet, kind of uncertain, somewhere in the middle distance behind me, and then nothing. I found the dish soap. I found the laundry pods. I never did find whatever the seasonal thing was. I checked out, I drove home, I put everything away, and I texted Reese. I just ran into Marcus at Target and literally looked through him like he was air. And she sent back 3 of those little crying, laughing emojis, and then, "I'm so proud of you," and then, "Wait, tell me everything." So I did, and the whole time I was describing it, I kept trying to locate the feeling that was supposed to go with it. Because here's the thing. I was expecting to feel triumphant, like I'd won something. That's what revenge is supposed to feel like in movies, right? Big swelling moment, vindication. But it wasn't really that. It was something quieter. It was more like I genuinely hadn't needed to perform anything. It hadn't been calculated. I hadn't stood in that aisle and decided to execute some kind of plan. I just had almost no instinct to engage with him, and I'd followed that instinct. And the fact that it probably rattled him slightly, that was a side effect, not the point. The point was that the space in my head where Marcus used to take up room had just quietly been filled with other things. My mom, when I told her later that evening, said something that I've been thinking about ever since. She said, "People like that always hope you're still thinking about them. It turns out most of them can't handle when you're not." And that felt right. Not as a victory, just as an observation. Marcus and I ended up in the same AP Gov class second semester of senior year. We sat on opposite sides of the room. We never directly spoke. There was no confrontation, no reconciliation, no moment of him learning his lesson in some tidy way. I don't know what's going on in his life now, and I don't really spend time wondering. Reese graduated with me in May. She's in college now, studying creative writing. She texted me a few weeks ago a screenshot of something she'd written that got published in her school's literary journal, and I genuinely sat there grinning at my phone for like 2 straight minutes. She turned out fine. Better than fine. I guess the thing I keep coming back to is this. The bullying never really stopped because anyone sat Marcus down and made him understand anything. It stopped because life moved forward and he got left behind in a version of himself that nobody was paying attention to anymore. And while that's not exactly justice, it's something. It's the thing that actually happens, a lot of the time, when you stop measuring your days by what someone else is doing to you. The most powerful thing I did in that Target, and I'm still not entirely sure I did it consciously, was just have something else going on. Just be someone walking through a store with a list on her phone and a podcast playing and a mom who needed laundry pods. Just be in my own life, fully, not performing it for anyone, not even him. He said, "Hey," I was already at the dish soap,